Self-Publishing Podcast, episode number 144.
This episode of the Self-Publishing Podcast is brought to you by 99 Designs, the online marketplace that helps you get outstanding book cover designs at an affordable price. Start your custom design today at 99designs.com/SPP. Enjoy a free Power Pack upgrade valued at $99.
Welcome to the Self-Publishing Podcast, where if you want something done right, you've got to do it yourself. And now, here are your hosts, three goths who spend most of their time up in the trees, Johnny, Sean, and Dave.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Self-Publishing Podcast, the podcast that follows three full-time authors as we attempt to change the face of indie publishing. Join us and our trailblazing guests as we shove aside boundaries, freely experiment, and occasionally screw up. I'm Johnny B. Truant, and my co-hosts, as always, are Sean Platt and David Wright. Freestyling it today. I decided to see, do I know that intro well enough yet, since we revamped it, only like 6 months ago? And the answer was, yes, I do.
Is your camera closer?
Better off on dead.
Well, because I'm leaning. I'm operating the controls.
He's on the edge, man.
Wow,
So
that's so... You're living dangerously.
Wow, you've never seen... I do that every single week.
No, I think you were just hovering there longer. And
Sean can't see the computer screen over his nose. What are you talking about?
He doesn't know at all what he's doing. Today will be an interesting crossing of worlds for me today. Just for me. Maybe for you guys too. Matt Gartland is going to be our guest today, and Sean knows him as master networker, guy who does some stuff with author landing pages that's really awesome, and original founding member of Sterling and Stone. But I know him as Matt, the guy I met at Blog World and clicked with and talked about completely different things about. So this will be fun.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to tell the Sterling and Stone story yet because we'll save that juice for when he's on. But Matt's he's just one of those guys that is impossible not to like. He's a really hard worker, and he's just a really good guy, and he knows a lot of people, and he's smart. And we actually have Matt to thank.
So Matt and I have that in common: impossible not to like.
We have Matt to thank for.
For Matt, it's about whether or not people like him. You find it impossible to like.
Oh yeah.
It's
Sorry,
about
I got
you
it
and
mixed
your
up.
outward projection.
We have Matt to thank for Monica Leonel. A couple of years ago, he told her to check out the podcast, and so a couple of years later, she's our writer, and she's awesome. And so I just found that out a couple weeks ago, but that's pretty awesome. You never know. I mean, that's exactly what I was saying about he's just a really good networker. He just knows a lot of people, and you never know when those intersections are going to come. And I'm very grateful for Monica. So
I feel like I almost want to tell a story that's very pertinent to networking, but I don't think I'm allowed to tell it yet. I think that's a next week thing. We just dropped something very cool on our Platinum readers like seconds ago, and it's super secret. That's the Insider Club. Like they can't talk about it because it's our secret for all of us. But there's networking involved in that too. It kind of is who you know and who you make yourself known to, not like who you knew pre-existing. But I mean, that's everything that I've done is Johnny 1.0, is who I am today. The fact that this podcast exists is all about personal connections.
Yeah, it's funny when Johnny and I first started. It was after we were already rolling with the SPP completely. But we hadn't written anything together, so Unicorn Western may have just been a joke from Dave at this point. But we were still just talking about things that we may do in the future. And Johnny referred to me as a great networker or a natural networker, something to that effect. And I disagreed with him.
I don't remember that at all. I must have gotten to know you better.
Yeah, and I said no. I said I don't feel like that's accurate at all. I really, really don't like networking.
People?
I don't. What, Dave?
People? Never mind.
Wow.
Wow.
Everybody.
Aborted twice, and then he disappears. Look at that. He's cowering in shame over there. So yeah, I never ever thought of myself that way, but I do know a reasonable amount of people, and I think that the best way to go about networking, and I'm sure we'll talk to Matt about this later, is to not really network. It's just to be yourself and be your most genuine self, and put yourself out there when you can, and always offer to help when you can.
Networking with a capital N. I mean, everybody reacts to it differently, and it must work or they wouldn't teach these things. But I find it really obnoxious, and there are some things that are like signatures. You can tell when somebody's asking to know about you in a way that they clearly don't give a shit and don't know anything, but they aren't like, "Hey, I'm curious about you." It's more like, "Hey, I'm curious about you. Let me ingratiate you." And there's this really false sort of thing that people do. And when I went to my first public event, my first thing where I was meeting people, it was South by Southwest in like 2009 or something. I don't remember exactly when that was. And I hung out with a lot of cool people, and I think somebody said at the end something about networking or whatever. And all I did was hang out with people. I didn't have business cards. No, I had some printed up because Jess Cummins yelled at me and said, "You need to have business cards." So I made up farcical business cards that had me being one of the authors of Trust Agents instead of Chris Brogan. And but I had those. But I don't think networking needs to be with a capital N. I think it's more about who you know and who you like. And we've seen that over and over again. A good example is, and this isn't really the same thing, but we do work with Monica and Amy now, and it's because we hung out with them, like in person, and we got to like them. It's not that they impressed us with their acumen, although they are impressive ladies, but it wasn't like they gave us a Rolodex and said, "Here, let me," a resume. So.
No, it wasn't like that at all. And the thing is, it takes. I mean, people all come in different flavors, right? So my friend Lori, who we'll talk about later because she was the other original third of Sterling and Stone, one of her sayings is, "Your network is your net worth," and for her, like that's totally true. That works. Her Rolodex is insane, but she and I are wired very differently, and we used to travel together a lot, and we would go to events or to masterminds, and she would make sure she talked to everyone in the room. She would make sure that she had at least her 10 minutes to rattle off with this person and rattle off with this person, and it was almost like a mission. And for me, I'm the opposite. When I go into a room, like I figure whoever I talk to, that's the way it's supposed to be, and that's great. And so it's different, and I think that you have to be to really get the most out of networking and to keep it from being a capital N situation. I think that it's best if you are just yourself. If you know, okay, I'm an introvert and I'm only going to have 3 conversations this whole thing, but they're going to be great conversations, and I'm going to have a relationship with these people after the event. I think that's how you want to look at networking. It's not, you can't go there with like a checklist, because then you do the things that Johnny was talking about, where you're just asking questions because it's checklist.
Tell me all about you. How can I help you? Who asks that question? How can I help you right away?
Right. It's just you don't want to be that guy at all, ever, under any circumstances, or that girl.
So I do have, we did have 2 questions. Do we want to discuss those that were sent in? Remember that?
Yeah, we totally do that.
And I should also mention, and I don't know when we're going to have cutoff for this, but I'll just mention briefly the Colonist Summit. There are now 5 places left. If you're interested in joining us, the payment plans are now in full effect. You don't have to pay in a lump sum. And that's sterlingandstone.net/colonist. So there's that. And there are 5 slots left. And all right, so questions. These were 2 things that were sent in. People who couldn't use the voicemail or couldn't figure it out, or they just merited on the show. So I guess I should just read these, right?
Yeah.
Yes, in the absence of a response, I will indeed just read them. So the first one is from Johan, who says, I am a film editor from South Africa with a keen interest in writing a television series, and I watched your Beats course on Udemy. I'm writing to you because I don't need to say why he's writing to us, but I just have a few questions. When do you do the single sentence, rough story arc, and simple synopsis only after the beats? So this would be a process question about our beats process. So when do you do that, Sean, since that's your thing?
It totally depends on the project, actually. Sometimes I have the sentence, and the sentence kind of helps me figure out where I'm going with the story, and I expand it from there. But I think with Axis, it was actually the opposite. I started out with the whole big story, and then I kept reducing it until I had the sentence. So I don't think there is a right answer. I think with all of these process things, there are no right answers. Not only are people different, but projects are different, and I find myself working differently, from project to project. So, an example, the thing that I'm working on right now is a sequel to another thing that we just finished up. And the first thing that we just finished up was very linear. I kind of knew what the story was going to be and the structure from it. So it was almost like an example of the sentence and then getting expanded out. And now it's the opposite. I'm kind of telling myself a story a little bit each morning, and that story is getting bigger and bigger. And then once I have the story, I'm gonna pare it down. So so I don't think there is an answer. I think that whenever you're looking at somebody else's process, you don't want to observe their process to replicate it. You want to look at their process to, pull DNA strands out that you can use in your own process, and what makes sense to you. And if any part of it doesn't make sense to you, then don't do it. That doesn't work. You just want to take little bits and pieces and kind of Frankenstein your own process, and then once you have your own process, continue to evolve it, get better and better at it.
Kudos to Sean for turning Frankenstein into a verb in that sentence. All right. So the next question he had was, I'll have four main. No, hold on. I want to design a television series, and the way I was thinking of handling it was to first design the beats and for the global story arc, then break it down to episodes, then break it down to scenes. There will be 13 episodes in the first of hopefully many seasons. So that would be the it depends. Go with what the project tells you that Sean was just.
Yeah, and I have a lot to say about that also, but I'll keep it brief.
Well, okay, just so you know, there's several more in his question, and then there's another question. So.
All right. Well, I think that if you have the ambition to write out 13 episodes of something and then you want to break them out scene by scene, I think that seems to me, at least the way I work and the way I know Dave and I work and the way that you and I work, Johnny, too, that's too much structure. That's not allowing your story to find itself. And I think that based on the way we work, but also, I've been listening to a lot of, writers panels and things like that with showrunners, and it's the same thing. They're writing these episodes week to week, and they may have some kind of very general idea about where the story is going to go, and they have touchstones that they want to hit. But if they're mapping themselves out, scene to scene to scene to scene through a whole season, there's just a lot of stuff that is either going to break or you're going to constrict your story. And I think that you shouldn't do that. You should say maybe this episode is about this thing and this is where I want to end. But you have to let the story grow.
All right, so continuing on, I'll have four main characters, each with their own story, but three of them will tie in with the other one. They will all support one storyline, but the viewer will only discover it in 3 or 4 episodes. Surely is going to make it difficult to tackle. Okay, so here's the final one. The question I'm asking is, what would your suggested workflow be for this tremendous task? And I think the conclusion I want to get is your order in which you'll eat this elephant. So how would you handle that? But I think you've already do you have anything to append to what you've said?
Yeah, I would say I would come up, if that were my project, I would want to know where I was ending episode 13. What's the ending there? And that ending may change, whatever, but I need to know what I'm driving towards. So I would have that ending, and then I would come up with maybe one sentence per episode. This is what this episode's about. This is what this episode's about 13 times, and then I'd write the first episode and not worry about the other 12 until the first episode was done, and then I'd reassess. Johnny
Next question is. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, this is getting messed up here again.
Yeah. What is we?
The second question is, what the hell is with Google lately?
I don't know, but we need a new solution because Google's just balls lately.
No, I don't think it's Google. I think it's Johnny's internet.
All right. So am I okay now? I can resume the audio again, or no?
Yeah, you sound fine now.
Well, I'm still frozen. Okay, there we go. Okay, so resuming. Okay, so let's move on to the next question then. Have you covered? Okay, so actually, this is something we've gotten a lot of questions about, and I don't know if we're going to have a satisfying answer. Have you covered the KDP Select advertising option yet? No, we haven't covered it yet. Listen every week and haven't seen a section. Maybe mention it in passing. I only just spotted it and it's very tempting, but the minimum $100 budget is a little daunting. I'd like to be sure it's working for people with great products, since I know I make a profit whenever I promote with well-known services. I'm one of those people who doesn't like exclusivity, but perhaps in this case, advertising directly to Amazon's customers' discoverability might be a trump card, at least for 90 days. So what this person is referring to is that KDP Select, and continuing to sweeten the pot for exclusivity, is offering the people who are in Select the option to run ad campaigns. Now, I don't know about the two of you, but I don't think we've touched that at all. I have a very, very, very uneducated, unscientific, totally unfounded reaction, and it's that it feels a little like Facebook ads to me. But it is within the Amazon ecosystem, so who knows? I don't know. Do we have anything to report, though?
No, well, it was in beta for a long time, and it was invite only. So now it's general release for select authors, and I disagree with Johnny about Facebook simply because Amazon is a buying environment, Facebook is not. So I think if you're doing a good job targeting, then it could be awesome. Because you are, hooking into their discoverability engine. We have done no testing with it whatsoever, but we absolutely are going to. We just need to figure out what book, because you can only test stuff that's in Select, and most of our stuff isn't in Select. So we kind of have to figure out what is in Select that's worth testing, and then actually do. Because where I do agree with Johnny about Facebook ads is that if you do it wrong, it's stupid and you're throwing your money away. So to make a Facebook ad effective, you have to know what you're targeting. And I think to make this worth its money, you also have to know what you're targeting. You can't just run an ad. You have to run an ad to specific books that are, the readers of those books are very inclined to like your book as well.
Can you choose the books you're advertising on?
Yeah, you choose. You can choose by interest or by book, but you can be as targeted as, like, for us, it would make sense to target Yesterday's Gone to people who buy The Stand. Like, it would automatically show up. But Yesterday's Gone would have to be Select, and Yesterday's Gone isn't Select. To me, that's the perfect test. If we did that, I think we could come up with some very good numbers and some data. But we have to actually do some homework as to what books we would want to link, and we're doing a lot of things right now as far as optimization. So this is interesting, but it's a little bit of a squirrel for us right now.
And I think optimization is the key here. If you're going to do this, you want to make sure that you have everything, all your ducks lined up in a row. You want to make sure you have the ideal cover. You want to make sure your sales page works, that your copy is awesome. Because basically what you're doing is you're buying an opportunity for people to come and see your book. So you want everything to be perfect. You want it to be so perfect that they see the cover, they're like, oh, this cover looks awesome. They see the product description and they say, I have to read this thing. If everything is not in order, and in a lot of our stuff it's not in order, we're fixing this stuff, sort of as we go for the product description and stuff like that. But if you have everything ready to go and you have your first book in a series or your best book or whatever ready to go, then why not try it?
Yeah, I agree 100% with Dave. There's two different factors here. There's traffic and conversion, and you can get all the traffic in the world, but if your conversion isn't set up, then you're going to waste your money. And in that respect, it is like Facebook. So you need to make sure that your traffic basically Amazon is giving you a mechanism to make traffic easy. So you get qualified buyers who are interested in your work, but if your conversion isn't set up, you're going to fail. And so for us, we're in that sweet spot where we need to find a book where we've already optimized all the other stuff, and it's also in select, and it's worth running the test on. And as soon as we get that, we will run a test and we will report how it goes.
Where do they show up? Like when I don't know anything about it because
it's in the dashboard. It gives you an opportunity.
Oh no! I mean, when your ads? Which are the ads that are the select ads?
There's different ads. There's ones that come up underneath, and then there's some there's 3 different kinds, and you can see in the dashboard when you create your ad the different sizes and placements of them.
But it is one that takes over your whole screen and won't let you click away until you buy the book.
I've run into that
$1 million.
It pisses me off. I can't it sucks. All right. So
do you have any awesome stuff?
That's funny because I knew you were going to ask that, and everything is awesome. Much like when you're part of the team.
Awesome.
I have an awesome thing.
John's going to be the one who's going to do this for me.
Okay, hold on. Before you begin your awesome thing, I've decided that you present an awesome thing every week on Self-Publishing Podcast, and I'll present an awful thing every week on Better Off Undead. And I have a great one lined up this week. You guys are going to love this story so much.
Oh, I can't wait. What a teaser.
Does it rival the bear story?
What's that?
Does it rival the bear story?
No, it has nothing to do with me. It's a news story, but you're going to love it.
But look at
unfortunately,
Dave marketing Better Off Undead. So,
oh my God, I do have a cool thing, but you can go first. I have a very cool thing.
All right. Well, okay. So I think this is there's a show, and this is not a new show. It's actually in its, I think, 7th or 8th season. But I just started watching Californication, and I think for writers out there, there's something great to learn about. I never watched as just
maybe in the first few seasons there is.
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen the later ones. I'm in season 2 right now, and what I think this show does a very, very good job with is they have the main character. He's played by David Duchovny. His name's Hank Moody, and he's a writer, and he's just very likable, even though he's an asshole. And I think that that's kind of hard to pull off in the way that they pull it off. And there's these great, I've referenced the book Save the Cat a couple of times, which is kind of an infuriating book because some of the advice is really good and some of it is just so stupid and it makes you want to tear pages out of the book. But the overall premise I really like, which is you have to have these Save the Cat moments where it doesn't matter how despicable your character is if you have them save a cat from a tree, and that's a metaphor. You don't actually have your character save a cat from a tree.
Or in House of Cards, kill a dog in the beginning.
Yes, that's the opposite of a save the cat moment. Exactly. It tells you.
Guess I'm not watching House of Cards then.
It tells you exactly who this character is. And so Hank Moody, he just does these really just terrible things, and he's just anyway. But he also does these things where, like in last night's episode, there's this girl and she's just being really, really obnoxious, and he's in the limo, in the back of a limo with a record exec, and they leave her on the side of the road. They just kick her out of the car because she's annoying, and they're up in the hills, and they're just like, get the fuck out of the car. And he's like, you can't do that. Like, you can't do that. And he makes them pull over, and he walks her home. And so, like, the 94 things that were just asshole that he did before that are like suddenly okay, and the show just does a really good job of walking that line, and I think that's a cool character study. So anyway, that's my cool thing.
So I thought of this with, and by the way, Matt might jump in at any time because we invited him ahead, so he might show up in the middle of my cool thing. It's Dave hates the book Redacted, the first episode. We had a bulleted email of why he hated it. And originally it annoyed me because there had been no positivity beforehand, but now he read Cursed, so he's allowed to piss on Redacted, and Redacted is stupid, but it's stupid hopefully in the right way. Well, whatever. Redacted is the short that the first episode that Sean and I wrote. It's kind of like for the Better Off Undead audience. It's a very, very fictionalized version, kind of us, but not really of us, and Dave just hates it, and he I hope I'm allowed to say this. He there's this tropey scene from the movie Downfall where Hitler is getting pissed off. Like, I don't even know what the original scene is, but people make all the time. They'll make Hitler react to videos, and Dave made Hitler reacts to Redacted. It's so awesome. Are we allowed to share that? Like, can I give that link or no?
Yeah, go for it.
So
Jacob, make sure that's in the show notes.
okay, well, I'm gonna put it in the chat, and you can share it around. So you have it. So that was super fun. And what was additionally fun is I can imagine just how long it probably took. There were several laugh out loud moments in that.
I was in a zone, and I'm doing it, and I'm going over the video, and I'm like timing it like what needs to be said perfectly, and I'm just laughing my ass off for it took about an hour.
Yeah,
So
it was pretty funny.
I'm laughing my ass off, and I'm doing it, and my wife comes into my office. She's like, "What are you laughing at?" So I'm like, "Here, you got to see this." So I show her, and she just stares at me like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
Well, my favorite part is when they show the people out in the hall being scared that Hitler is yelling so loudly, and there are two women, and the one says to the other, "It's okay, Monica. I know you like it."
Yeah, that part's awesome. The whole thing was pretty funny. I have one more if we're still waiting.
We're still waiting for that.
Okay, so I got this book. It's a long time since I ordered an actual book from Amazon, but it's The Hero with 1,000 Faces from Joseph Campbell, which this is just a classic hero's, like a lot of the hero's journey stuff that you read is based on this. This is what George Lucas patterned Star Wars directly off of this.
The one with Jar Jar Binks?
No, the OG. And it was funny because I
1,000 faces. A few of them have to be like Jar Jar or something weird like.
There might be a Jar Jar in one of these actually, but I was getting annoyed.
Sean Frozen for you?
Oh, good. It's him this time. It's not me. I thought
It's
it was me.
everybody.
Oh,
You're
okay.
Frozen, Sean.
Oh, there he's back.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, no, we can't.
So I really hate it when you get a Kindle, when the Kindle version of a book is more than a print version. That annoys me so much. Like and it shouldn't annoy me as much as it does, but it just does because it's such a sign that the publishers they're not getting it. Especially when you charge like $10.99 for a Kindle version, because if they just lowered it by $1, they would actually make more. So they're not only screwing us, the consumers, they're screwing themselves, and it's just so dumb. But anyway, there were a few books that I wanted to buy that are more, they're about screenwriting, and so they were all too expensive they were all more for Kindle than print, and I was getting annoyed. And then I wanted to get this on Kindle, and it wasn't even available on Kindle. The only way you could buy this was in hardback. And so I got it, and I'm actually pretty excited to sit down and read this. I have 2 hardbacks now, because Dave got me the J.J. Abrams book for called the Ship of Theseus for.
I should write a short story based on that metaphor.
and I'm pretty excited about reading that too. So I've got 2 hardbacks to read within all my reading soon.
We may be the only publishing company that has made several Ship of Theseus references in our fiction. So there you go. Where's Matt? What's up? You sent him an email?
Yeah, I told him 2:35 so we could have time to do our awkward conversation about cover design, which maybe we should start right now. And then.
Well, it's funny that you mention cover design right as Matt comes in. Let's ask Matt. Hey, Matt.
Uh-oh. What did I just walk into?
How are you doing?
Okay, so let's ask you guys. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Matt. So I have a question for you. I know that this is on the scale of 0 to 10, and 10 being impossible. I think I know where we all stand on this, but if you needed a cover design economically, if you couldn't afford it, you're fucked, right?
0 to 10, I think you're pushing 10.
Dave, where would you stand on this? If you had to get a cover designed, I didn't have any sort of preamble. So that book had a cover, Joseph Campbell's. It was a very nice cover. et cetera, et cetera. How would I get a cover like that, Dave?
Well, you could turn to our friends at 99 Designs. They have tons of people waiting to create a cover perfect for your book. And I just want to say, as long as we've been doing these spontaneous conversations about book design, we still get questions in the email. The other day we got one asking something along the lines of, I want to do the 99 Designs things, but I don't know how much to offer the people. Like they thought like they just created the price and just offered it. No, there are packages that 99 Designs has, and basically what you do is you come up with you got your book that you want to do. You come up with an idea for the cover. You maybe present some ideas of other covers that you like out there, and a bunch of designers will compete to get you. Sorry, these guys are chatting in the window. The designers will compete to give you the best cover possible for your book, and it's a great thing. And their basic package starts, I think, at $2.99, and if you use our thing, you get like $100. You get promoted to the next one, $100 extra level for absolutely free. And we've not had we know people that have used the bigger packages, and they're definitely of value. But so far we've been using the basic one ourselves, and we've always been happy with the covers that they've designed for us. Incredible.
So, Dave, what are some of the precautions that maybe a first-time author going into this using 99 Designs? How do you tee up a really good almost description? Or maybe I'm saying things you guys have already discussed. But I've had good success with 99 Designs. I've also, maybe due to my own miscommunication of like requirements or things, kind of had some off situations. It didn't really come back, didn't strike the tone I was going for. So how do you tee it up so that you can really?
Okay, you're ad-libbing way too much, Matt.
Okay.
Stick on script here. Did you try that question again anyway?
Don't think for yourself. Okay, I'll actually answer that question. We had a situation where we were.
Do you have anything to lose?
No, you have absolutely nothing to lose. And here's the thing: if you don't like what the designers come up with, then you walk away. Goodbye, adios. I don't need you guys. But that's not going to happen, because you're going to have so many awesome designs. You're not going to know which one to choose from. You might want to buy all of the designs.
All right. Well, this is a worthwhile use of Matt's time, but alas, it must be true. And let's just say that to start your cover design contest today, go to 99designs.com/SPP, and you'll get that free Power Pack upgrade to the bigger package. I can't believe that, right? That Dave was about, valued at $99, and that'll make your design contest stand out, and you're going to get more attention and all that. So 99designs.com/SPP. We're going to keep doing it until you give us suggestions, 99 Designs. We're going to keep doing this crap. So there you go. All right. So welcome to the show, Matt Gartland. I don't know if you listened to the prelim, but I was saying how Sean knew you in this one capacity, and I knew you in totally different capacity, and then we realized.
And I knew you from your work as a serial killer, so it all worked perfectly.
Yeah,
triangulate.
There's a common denominator, at the nexus of all that. Absolutely.
So maybe I don't even know where is a good place to start. I'd like to hear the Sterling story, because I don't even know that I know that. Yeah,
well, it was funny. Sean and I just kind of caught up a little bit the other day, and I didn't realize that Sterling and Stone had kind of come full circle. It was a lot of fun to kind of put an initial concept together. What, Sean, 3 years ago now?
Yeah, it had to be just before the podcast started. Maybe
it probably was
2 or 3 months before the podcast started, and we were probably petering out about the time the podcast started, where we had done that big giant batch of nonfiction. We put together the original Sterling and Stone put together about 50 nonfiction books.
Yeah.
And
50 covers.
Yeah. We obviously saw the success that Sean was having. Really, Dave, you and Sean, through Available Darkness. in the serialized format, tried to do that with nonfiction, took, Sean, your existing kind of Ghostwriter Dad platform, migrated that over to the digital writer, and started to build out this infrastructure around serialized nonfiction books. And it was challenging. It was a lot, I think, more challenging than we anticipated in terms of making that model work for that type of nonfiction.
Well, what it was, we really did, we always had our sights on fiction. It was always supposed to be a fiction company. We wanted to be a story studio. Like, that was the whole idea. Very much, like what we want to do now. The difference was, our third partner, Lori, who, I've talked about before, we wanted her to be, basically, Matt's very dialed in. And Matt is great at operations. So he was operations, I was trying to get the stories done, and Lori was going to be marketing. Very loosely, those were kind of our roles. And to get Lori on board, it made sense. She's a very nonfiction person. So it made sense for us to go nonfiction first. We had a lot of writing related books that we could leverage for for the digital writer, and she had a website called Social Caffeine at the time. I think she actually still does, and so there were some books there, and then we were going to work with another partner, and not a partner but somebody else for another nonfiction line, and that just did not work out. I think both Matt and I were very uncomfortable with that that branch, and it just wasn't going to work. And so the whole idea was to get the company off the ground with nonfiction so that we could move into fiction. And that's where the original version of The Beam was born, which that was the one and only fiction project that we did. And it was after we had kind of already decided we're not really going to go forward with this, but let's finish what we started. Right. And we did that, and it was done.
What do you think of the project? You probably didn't, maybe just the first chapter, the original project. Do you have thoughts on that in The Beam? No, he's not there, damn it. Sorry. It's going to be good. It's going to be funny. Both versions of The Beam.
Yeah, Dave hates the first chapter of The Beam, both versions, and it's also the only chapter that he's read of either version. So
I think there's a correlation there.
Yeah, Dave's not a fan of The Beam, or Redacted, as it turns out.
I really liked it. I liked the sophistication of it. I mean, a lot of your fiction, all of your fiction is certainly very sophisticated, but at least kind of at that time and getting into that, or attempting to get into that myself, I loved it. It was challenging, and I liked that challenge.
Yeah, I'm really, really, really happy with where that went. We've been trying to get season 3. Season 3 just keeps getting nudged a little further on our production schedule, but I think we'll be hitting it in a little more than a month. But it's long. What's funny is that the original version was just, it followed kind of the CI model, and Realm and Sands, we take a lot more words. There's just a lot more bulk there, and so the original skeleton that we used for that first version ended up being twice as long. So literally the version, the Realm and Sands version of The Beam is, what is it, 180,000 words, Johnny? Is that about right?
Oh wow!
I think it's 165.
Yeah, it's pretty long, and there's 2 seasons, and they're each that long. So it's a lot of words, but there's a lot of story there. It's really, really good. But anyway, enough about that. One of the things that I always really admire about Matt is I think that he's a tremendous networker, and in the most natural way too. You don't even know who Matt knows until, I know that person, or he's just very, very good at it. He's very natural at it.
When you're working with him, look at that.
Exactly.
You. Yeah. Well, and then Monica, on your team, that was the most recent example, Sean, you and I just discovered.
Right. No, that's exactly right. It's these, you don't know. Matt's somebody that you want him to know who you are, because if he likes you and he respects you, he's going to say nice things about you, because that's kind of Matt's personality. It's his character. He says great things about people that he respects in just the most natural way. And that's the best kind of networking. As Johnny said, I don't know if you were listening to any of that before you came on, but we were talking about the difference between networking with a capital N and a lowercase n.
Mm-hmm.
And I was using Lori as an example. When I used to travel with Lori, and she's definitely networking with a capital N. She wants to meet everybody in the room, and her Rolodex is definitely part of her business. And for me, I'm despite how I come off on the podcast, I'm much more shy than that. And I don't feel comfortable doing that. But you seem to have this very sweet spot where you're very well mannered, and you know who to talk to and what to say.
Yeah, I think my parents get some of that credit. It's not like it was a conscious choice. I mean, all that's very humbling. Thank you. It's just, I could never be like a capital N person. It just would feel like way too out of body, I think, for me. I could maybe do it once or twice, but it would be a performance, right? And I'm not one to kind of put on an act. I think back to even actually how I met Johnny. Good time. He just stepped off camera. So this was, 2008 maybe? Las Vegas and Blog World. So I was out there. I was writing for the web a little bit on a blog about health and fitness and stuff, and had some mutual friends, the same sort of topic, right? Adam Baker, Man vs. Dead. At the time, he was writing very actively over there. And I got invited to sit down at breakfast one day or one morning. I think it was Adam was there, and Johnny B. Truant walks up and sits down. I think that was the first time he and I actually had a conversation, at least face to face. And then we quickly discovered that we're both in Ohio, and then in the subsequent months, I remember we actually all rallied. Adam Baker drove over from Indianapolis. I drove up from Cincinnati to Columbus, and Johnny came over, and we all met in Columbus and had coffee together and just kind of shot the shit, and it was fun.
Yeah, and that's so natural. And when do you remember how we met?
We met. I can remember tweeting you about like copywriting projects, I think, and discovered that we were both in Cincinnati.
This was pre-meeting. Like, I had just moved to Cincinnati. I had lived there for, I don't know, maybe a month.
Yeah, it wasn't very long. We met up at Starbucks down by Kenwood Mall. Right?
No, that's when we actually met. But we had a pre-meeting. We had a pre-meeting before that because I had just moved to Cincinnati, and I didn't know anyone other than Lori. And Lori had me working like 94 hours a day. And so I was just like never sleeping. And you sent me an email, and you're like, hey, I've heard great things about you, and you live in my city. Would you like to grab a cup of coffee sometime? And like, to me, that's just so foreign. Like, I would never email someone I don't know and invite them to coffee just because I am more shy than that, despite how loud I am on the show. And I said, I just settled here. I don't have any time for that, but thank you so much. That's very kind. And I said, why don't we circle back later? And you did. You circled back later. And it was November the second time, I remember. And I had just come back from Austin, and I was very, very tired. And I said, I'm sorry. I don't mean to say no, but I'm just really busy. And then James Clear started nagging.
Oh,
he's like, dude.
That's what it was. That's right.
And he's like, I'm in Cincinnati, and you're in Cincinnati, and we think we should all meet for coffee, and Matt Gartland is my friend, and we should all meet for coffee. And I'm like, okay. That guy sent me 2 emails, and I said no, so this sounds great. And so we went, and we had that long, like, 2-hour coffee, and it was awesome.
Yeah, it was epic.
But it's because you have the balls to reach out. I don't do that. I mean, both Dave and Johnny know I'm broken in that way. I have a very hard time sending a cold email, and I think that's a failing on my part that you're exceptional at.
Yeah, well, thank you. I would boil it down maybe to a couple things, but the big thing is persistence. And I know you guys talk about this in a variety of forms as pertains to authors and careers and getting your projects out there. You kind of just have to keep going at it. And if the first book doesn't work, write the second one. If this marketing plan or this marketing approach didn't work, try something different. Don't just stop at the first thing. And my girlfriend will kill me for saying this out loud, especially like on public television or public radio. But that's actually how we met. Last year's WDS, World Domination Summit out in Portland, I met her on the flight out there, the connecting flight. She wasn't actually going to Portland, and I got her number and followed up with her when I got back. And like, she never acknowledged my first message, so I waited, however long it was, a couple days, a week or something, and then I tried this second time. And I don't know how maybe common that is, but maybe guys are like, yeah, I'll take the hint, I won't follow up, and I did.
I never would have called a second time. I never would have.
So, and she just totally, something happened. She never got my message. It was actually a text message the first time. She claims to this day, and I poke fun at her still about it, but it never got to her. So I tried again. And she's like, if you hadn't followed up that second time, none of this would be here. So.
I would have assumed she'd filed a restraining order.
So I guess I just have dogged persistence, and it doesn't always work, but I think it works more times than not.
I think that all of us here, well, maybe not you, Dave. I was going to say, I think that at least Matt, Sean, and I all are pretty good at networking, even though Sean is denying it, but in totally different ways. And I think that we all agree that the value is you need to do it, just because it is who you know. One of the this is the story I can't really tell yet, but some of the connections that we've made this week, me and Sean, were largely because you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, and Matt's like he's a supercharged networker. He's very good at it, but Sean wouldn't go out and reach out to somebody, but dude, you managed to be in the places. I knew you before. I knew you by reputation before you knew that I knew you, basically. I mean, that's how we met at Blog World.
My networking list is just a little bit smaller than my hit list.
That doesn't surprise me.
I think that it's very easy for writers to be isolated and to kind of undervalue how important it is, because you don't think, it's not like you're making big deals, right? Where someone like Lori, when she says your net worth is, or your net worth is your network, or your network is your net worth, I understand where she's coming from, because she's brokering deals. It is who you know, and it's very easy to think as a writer that doesn't matter. You're writing your book, you're putting it out there to the world, and yeah, you want, even you get writers who think, okay, I get it, I have to build a list. Okay, I get it, I have to talk to my list. But that's still not the same as building those relationships. And when we go to in-person events, those are people who end up being on our team, or doing covers for us. It's because we're out there and we're meeting those people, and there's an importance there that I don't think you understand how heavy it is until you actually experience the benefits of it.
And there's multi-dimensions, but at least two prominent, maybe macro dimensions. One for writers, networking with other writers. But I think what we're seeing more and more self-published authors are talking about this is, networking with, on people on the professional side, on the business side of books and publishing, either going to more industry events or building out those connections, or following those blogs and following those people on social media. It's not just about trying to, find other people like you per se. In the writer community, that's very valuable and necessary. But reach out and start connecting in with designers, and people that produce books, that do conversions, if that's the sort of help that you might need down the road. It's a facet, multi-talented, universe to kind of start tapping into.
Yeah, absolutely, because we're all very good at one thing, right? Or we could be good at many things. Like Dave. Let's use Dave as an example because he loves it when we do that. And so Dave,
yes,
Dave is clearly great at a lot of things. He's a great storyteller and he's good visually. But even now we're finding that it makes sense for him not to do all the covers, right? Because we're finding that our covers sometimes convert better when he's not doing them. And yeah, he can make a nice image, but it makes more sense for him to focus on the storytelling because that's what he's best at. And so if we're outsourcing covers and he has more time to tell stories, that's a good thing. That's positive movement. But it also makes sense to have relationships with your designers and not just
Yeah, and that's how you're going to really hit that sweet spot. Maybe to do the callback to 99 Designs, maybe you get something that's really close, but if that's a designer that you then continue to work with over time, then he or she will really start to understand what makes you tick and what drives your stories, and start to pick up on little nuances that they'll subtly weave into the design that really kind of just makes it pop or click, right? So that's the stuff where I think a lot of the storytelling magic comes from. both certainly in words, and it starts with the words, but then through these relationships with other creative professionals in the book space, that's how the whole experience of a book can really come to life.
So do you want to talk just a little bit about, because you have kind of a wide array of ways that you network. I mean, you have Winning Edits, and you have the podcast, and there's just kind of a lot of ways that you've reached out to authors and people in the community. So I think talking about the stuff that you've done to reach out
Sure. Yeah.
is good, but also kind of what the biggest takeaways you've had because there's a pretty broad spectrum of people that are in your network, and what are the big takeaways that you're seeing across that spectrum?
So for me, I part of the networking was actually publishing some of my thoughts, myself. I think that even if you're on the service side of this business and you are a cover designer, or if you're involved in the production of a book in some way, still try to get your thoughts out there. I think of maybe Alex Miles Younger does this very well. He was the cover designer at Seth Godin's The Domino Project, a couple years back, and he writes for the web a little bit and gets out there. And I think that's important to kind of facilitating some of this very natural small end networking. I think certainly going to conferences, but a couple key conferences, and then just listening. Don't always be the one trying to talk. I think the more talking attitude, especially if it becomes unbalanced, that kind of fuels the capital end networking. You want to be more of the, in the spotlight, or the person in the center of the room. But if you just kind of listen, you'll start to pick up on a lot of interesting things. You'll start to hear patterns of people. Oh, I need this help or that help. Then I guess for me, kind of to bridge those two, writing a little bit for the web, starting to meet people that way, meeting some people in person, understanding what are some of these patterns, then I can help kind of be something of a traffic cop. And that's what I really find a lot of joy and satisfaction doing, right? It's that sort of connector mentality. Ultimately that helped with Monica, I think, in a certain way for you guys, right? A bit recently. It's certainly that connector mentality is driving a lot of the Winning Edits business right now in terms of the authors and the author entrepreneurs that we work for, and then ultimately even my podcast Author MBA. We've had some really cool people on the show, and I wouldn't have been able to get to them if I hadn't helped connect other people in the past. So I do believe that you reap what you sow, and if you can listen, pay attention to people, respect people, and try to help them out, it'll come back to you.
So networking, our whole word last year was iterative. Everything was iterative, right? And I think even networking
iterate. I just like to offer that. It should be iterate instead of iterative. So
iterate. So from our master articulator, we iterate, and even networking is the same, right? Where you don't worry about who you have to know, and it's just treat every relationship with respect, even if it's the tiniest relationships, because they can grow into something else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, I'm a huge proponent of iteration or ideation. All of that. I have a background that some of you guys know, in software development. I'm even still sort of tapped into the software development side of the web and some of those businesses and projects. And I think that is important. It's certainly true of story design. Writing, rewriting, editing. That process. I think that's what ultimately really stitches together a really great readership too. If you can get good content out there time and again. It's maybe a silly analogy, but it's like sewing. You keep sort of having these lock stitches after lock stitches, and that really kind of builds a really a tight fabric of a community. Whether that community is a community with yourself as a writer with your readership, or that community is your professional network. I think all of that is built on this idea of putting yourself out there, adding value, rinse and repeating.
I had two separate. Sorry, I had two separate people this week say I wanted to find out something, how to connect with somebody, and twice they were like, you got to go to conferences. Like that's Sean was around for both of those instances where it's like you got to start going to things. Joanna Penn goes to all sorts of conferences in Europe, and that's something that we haven't done. Matt and I met at a Blog World event. But other than we've been doing our own in-person things, the one in September and then the upcoming Colonist Summit. But other than that, I've gotten out of that habit, and so I think that's something that we want to start getting back to. I feel like I derailed you a little bit there. That felt like an interesting anecdote, and then it didn't.
No, it was good. Actually, you had the miraculous timing of stepping off camera when I said that as well.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. There's no way that you and I probably would have met if I hadn't gone to BlogRoll. And I was saying I thought it was back in '08. So yeah, it's just amazing. If you just throw yourself at an opportunity that is probably largely unknown, especially if you're first time into, say, being a conference goer, you just got to you got to do it. You don't have to be that again person in the center of the room. Just go and listen and mingle and provide value and be. I just think a good person, add value. It'll work.
You touched on software for a moment, and I know we're a little all over the place with you, but that's because you've got so much going on. Like you really do have, and I mean that as a compliment. I love having a lot going on. But my question is, we met last week to talk about something that I think is on the software side that's very, very cool for writers, and I think almost everybody listening to this right now would probably dig that. So I think I know we'll do our thing later in March and talk more about it, but I still think you might want to talk about that a little.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the tee-up. I'll maybe drag out the suspense a little bit longer. I do think as something of a fan of web technology, very much even a nerd of it, a geek of it, I think that more and more these worlds are aligning in a great way. The world of technology empowering writing and creating and publishing. And I think of even James Altucher, right? And he wrote a Publishing 3.0 article, maybe even a year and a half ago, about the distinction that is no longer between traditional publishing versus self-publishing. It's about professional versus like unprofessional writing and publishing. And I do think that these technology tools are really helping with that. So the one that you and I were talking about the other day, Sean, is booklaunch.io. If you've spent any time at all, studying, what's going on in books, and you look at the big powerhouse players like Timothy Ferriss, all of these guys and gals are, launching their books in very epic, ways. Big marketing campaigns all centered around probably something of a book landing page or a book launch page with bundles and all these other things, right? Maybe a trailer video, certainly the opportunity to join a list, that sort of stuff. And sort of almost to even have a corollary with cover design, you can certainly go out and you can find a designer and a development team to design a custom site for you and build it, and it'll look amazing, hopefully. It can be very, very expensive, of course. So I guess if there's an analogy or a correlation here, the 99 Designs version of getting a book landing page done is a tool that I do have affiliation with, booklaunch.io. The team is great. They're really devoted to this industry and to authors and writers, and it's a technology that's out there. It's working. There's a lot of wonderful writers already using it to help them sell more books in minutes. You can just drag and drop, get this stuff going. It's very simple. So I consult with that team because I believe in this sort of technology, and I believe in the team behind it, and they're doing great stuff.
Matt, I was this was a discussion that Sean was in on a presentation for the book launch guys, and I didn't make it to that one. So I actually know very little about this, and so I can sort of act as like guy who asks questions that the audience might have. So how
Perfect.
Exactly. So you have a landing page, and what are you doing with it? And how is that a tool that's gonna help supercharge your launch? Like I assume that it doesn't magically make traffic come to you. You still need to be able to send the traffic, but has it all in one place? Looks pro, that sort of thing.
Right. It's all in one place. Actually, one of the coolest things that Sean got a glimpse of the other day is that it can actually build a page for you if you have an existing book already up on Amazon. So if you are certainly even like you guys, you have a backlist of books, right? And maybe for one reason or another you haven't had a launch page or a marketing page in the past, just take your Amazon ASIN number and you can go to booklaunch.io, and they call it the builder feature, and you just drop that number in and like literally click one button, and it will pull in all the relevant key content from your Amazon listing page, including your book cover, the summary copy. It'll even analyze the key colors of your cover and whatnot, and it'll sort of customize an initial color palette for your book landing page.
It's really, really cool.
And then you can tweak a couple extra things. You can add in other cover images. You can add in testimonials. If you're lucky to maybe get a blurb from Seth Godin, you can upload his headshot, put in a testimonial, a little more information about you, the author, your headshot, your bio, your social links, stuff like that. And then it's one resource, right? You can customize the domain so that it's easy to remember and spell, and then you can just give that out to people. You can share it on social media very easily. You can put it in your email and newsletter, and then everything for your book is on that page, including and certainly most importantly, buying the book. So you can add in as many links as you can probably fathom, across a variety of marketplaces: Amazon, 1-800-CEO if your book is listed there. Indie books, Barnes and Noble, Nook, even Gumroad. If you sell direct through Gumroad, you can integrate with Gumroad. So it's an all-in-one resource. You're right, Johnny. It doesn't get the traffic for you. You still need to be the one directing people there. But that's the only place where you have to direct people to start selling more books.
Do you feel that that's a better nonfiction tool or fiction tool, or it doesn't matter?
I don't know if it matters. I would say that probably more nonfiction authors, again, sort of at the bestseller level, are employing these sorts of marketing strategies to help them sell more books.
But they're usually ahead of the curve of fiction.
Well, they're also business minded.
Right.
Precisely, and I think that's one of the key observations to be taking away from what's happening, in this industry over the last at least year, 2 years. We're seeing the rise of book trailer videos, which BookLaunch.io can accommodate. We're seeing obviously the proliferation of bundling being more and more important to driving book sales, and I do think yes, a lot of the nonfiction authors, because they tend to be a little more business minded. You're absolutely right. I think they're the ones that are discovering some of these tactics and testing them out and figuring out which ones are more effective than others. But that's not to say at all that fiction authors shouldn't be paying attention. I think actually quite the opposite. I think that they should be looking at what's working in nonfiction, tinkering with the tactics as they may, figure out what works for them. But I think the big and the broad brushstrokes do work.
What are this is not a direct question about the landing pages, but it's the sort of thing I think that you would glean from doing stuff with landing pages. Are you getting any feel for what actually makes a difference with conversion in terms of so for fiction, it's a lot of it is book cover. I would imagine that's true for nonfiction, but maybe not as much. Blurbs, what are the sort of key things?
Those are two of the big things. Still, a very attractive cover. I think we've talked about that probably ad nauseum today. The idea is in a nonfiction sense of empathy, of a self-identifiable quality. So when you talk about writing maybe your headlines or some of the copy on a page like a book landing page, especially your kind of author bio, trying to orient yourself to the reader, so that whatever story you're telling or problem you claim to be solving by way of your book, that there's an emotional reaction not only to the book but really to you. That can also come to life through book trailer videos. I worked, for example, with Pat Flynn a couple years back on his memoir book called Let Go, and his memoir book was obviously all about him and sort of his journey becoming an entrepreneur and creating a big brand online. And he created a trailer video for that project, and it was very emotional. It was very almost, what's the term? It struck a chord, right? He really revealed a lot of himself, was vulnerable about it, and it worked.
Have you seen Jonathan Field's trailer for Uncertainty?
Yeah, that had the same sort of quality to it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's I think the book trailers that don't work, because it's very easy to say book trailers are stupid and they suck. That's because most of them do. Most of them just are not very good. Trust Me, I'm Lying has a fantastic trailer.
Yeah.
So there are book trailers out there that are highly effective. Uncertainty was just Jonathan hired a camera crew to come in, but it was basically him sitting on a stool. It was very pro. They got the right angles and they got the right resonance there, but it was not like he had all these fancy graphics or special effects or anything. It's just him selling the book because he's selling the emotion. And I think that You find out what is it that your book touches and then do that. Now, clearly that's easier to do with nonfiction than fiction, but again, I think that it's a changing landscape and it's something to pay attention to.
If I look at like say Hugh Howey, right, and all of his success, like he's so good at pulling out like the one sentence summary, or at most the one paragraph summary that just nails his book. Like it's so on point, the emotion, or the pivotal sort of like almost cliffhanger, and he can just summarize it so succinctly. And I think that if you can do that, with words, and I actually think it's harder for nonfiction people to do it, because nonfiction books can be, I think, a little more prone to almost hot air. I think that fiction, because it's far more narrative, and has. I just think that there's almost more going for a good fiction story to be able to pull out a nugget or something and help kind of hook people than even a nonfiction story.
This isn't on that topic exactly, but what you just said I think is really, really important, and maybe it could almost be a cool thing that I discovered over the past few weeks. And it was tied in a little bit with Sean talking about Save the Cat during one of our story meetings, is the idea of a log line for fiction. So the log line is Sean, give me a log line that's used in movies. Like what it's like the catchy sentence that draws you into the.
It's the high concept. I mean, the one we joke about on the show all the time is it's Die Hard on a bus.
Right.
Right, for speed, because you immediately know what that means. And
but is that a log line or is that a pitch? Because like I'm thinking of two that are two best ones I can't give yet. But they aren't just a description and they aren't just a hook. They're like, I got to read that. Movies do it really well. Wasn't one
Did Johnny freeze for you guys?
of them like Love Never Dies?
No, that's almost like a tagline. A log line is something a little more involved than that. But it's basically a two sentence. It's almost like a pitch. It's a couple of sentences that basically totally sells the idea of your movie, because log lines really are movies, not books. It really sells your entire idea to whoever's listening and gets them immediately interested, because a log line makes them want to open the first page of that script.
Yeah, it's maybe splitting hairs. I think of it as a promise statement. It's a very genuine promise statement that you then back up. The worst thing in the world is to make a big, grandiose claim, whether it's a fiction or a nonfiction book, and then not be able to fulfill on that. Right? That'll just eat away at your credibility, and I think undermine your attempts at building community. But if you can back it up, then that works. It's not a bad tactic. It's, I think, quite the opposite. You're creating anticipation, and we see this in sporting events. We see this everywhere. So you can do it with books.
Well, it's the headline. It's the you'll never believe how fat these child stars are now, right? Of course I want to see what they look like.
Here's the distinction I'm making. So. And you guys can tell me what this is. Like I don't really know. We say that Robot Proletariat is Downton Abbey with robots, but the problem with that, it does tell you what it is. It does have a curiosity factor, but at the same time, I think it strikes the wrong mood if you're trying to hook somebody, because it's a thoughtful, it's a suspenseful piece. It is a good adventure. So the Downton Abbey with robots is like Die Hard on a bus. But the one that I've been using lately, I made a new opt-in page and stuff, is this isn't really the same thing. Robots were made to serve us, but now they have other plans. That's almost like a little teaser sort of thing. I don't know. It feels like one is trying to get you to read and one is trying to sell the concept.
Well, it's almost like you want the why in there, right? So it's like it's about a guy who, right? It's about a guy who does this. It's the reason. It's the reason for caring. It's the reason your hook actually matters.
Stumper.
Yeah. Well, to kind of almost throw a software angle back into this is where I think some testing helps. This is where you can, create a couple of these concepts, and maybe one is a little more, sales pitchy, and another is a bit more maybe descriptive. And given the uniqueness of your story, fiction or non, the problem you're trying to solve, test a couple of these things and see which one is going to perform better for you.
Yeah, because a logline, the logline has two jobs. It has to summarize, and again, we're talking film here, right? Because that's where the language comes from. But it has to summarize the film, but it also has to give you emotional insight into why that matters. If it's just a description of what it is, and that's what you're saying, Johnny, that Downton Abbey with robots has no emotional insight, right? It's just it's a shortcut. It's Die Hard on a Bus, but there's no truth to that. A log line done well explains what it is in shorthand, but it also has some core emotional truth that gets you to care.
All right.
I want to hear what Dave thinks about all this.
I got nothing. I like the Johnny's line. The robots built to serve us, but now they have other plans.
Now, see, that's
really effective.
Because Dave thinks. I think you hate so much; it's hard to remember what. But
it's an art
my
form.
guess is when you heard Downton Abbey with robots, you probably rolled your eyes and said, "What the fuck?"
I rolled my eyes so hard.
And so the fact that you like this one, I think, points out a key difference between them. All right, sensing a lot of
Dave lines.
All right, well, why don't we finish up? Matt, you do have a lot of things going on. I think that booklaunch.io is probably the most relevant to this audience and the Author MBA podcast, but is there anything else that you would want to mention as to where to find you?
Winning Edits is sort of my headquarters, if you will. It's home base for the podcast. The website's a bit dated, that notwithstanding. Winningedits.com, you can check out the stuff that we do, which is a lot of this stuff. We are a production team, a strategy and production team for authors. We have a lot of fun helping bring, largely nonfiction. We have dabbled in some fiction, but we typically do nonfiction projects. And yeah, we help with the editorial side, the cover design side, production side, and it's a real thrill to be, working on some of these big projects and helping advance, sort of this campaign of, it's not just about traditional versus self-publishing; it's about professional versus non-professional.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, that's what's funny is I was trying to remember if I made that point in Write, Publish, Repeat because I remember thinking it. I remember thinking that people don't notice specifically a publishing pedigree, but they do notice if you look like a dick. So
yeah, the lines are blurring more than ever. We see people that are pursuing self-publishing as a gateway into traditional publishing. We see certainly seemingly an ever-increasing exodus away from traditional publishing into more independent or micro publishers. Our friends over at the Asymmetrical Press, right? Josh and Ryan. Those guys are doing phenomenal, very professional, high-quality work. And you talk about networking. They have probably, at least some of the people that I know, they have built out an amazing network across all of the indie bookstores, or many of them across the country, right? And they're just doing it on their own.
All right, so check Matt out at winningedits.com, the booklaunch.io for the pages, the author landing pages, and the Author MBA podcast, which is also at Winning Edits. Matt, thanks for being on the show. This was very cool and plus a fun step back in time to circle back on.
It was. No, you guys are fantastic, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. Thanks for the invite. You want to be our Shemp? Because we need a fork.
All right, so thanks everybody for listening.
A rare Shemp reference.
Thanks everybody for listening to the Self-Publishing Podcast. If you want to check out our best advice without all the off-topic bullshit, that's in Write, Publish, Repeat, which you can find at selfpublishingpodcast.com/WPR. And just to remind you, call in a session in April 18th and 19th in Austin, Texas. A little bit of live networking. There are 5 slots left for that. And we do offer payment plans now, so sterlingandstone.net/colonists. Thanks everybody for joining us.